We're going to talk a little bit about Star Wars. As you can see, I have Darth Vader back there. Okay. I love Star Wars. Star Wars is, I didn't grow up watching them as a kid. I started watching it. Well, teenager. I started watching them. I didn't even really know about Star Wars until like I watched the third episode. I think it's Revenge of the Sith, right? I was the first movie of Star Wars I actually watched in theater. That's how old I am, right? And like, once I got into Star Wars, like I find myself like the older movies, they're like Empire Strikes Back is probably the best movie, but at times those are kind of slow for me, and sometimes they're hard to watch, right? Full transparency. But then I get the issue with some of the prequels. Like, I understand, right? But one thing, I love the world of Star Wars. I love the aspect of Jedi and Sith. I was always on the Sith side. You know what I mean? I always like gravitated more towards that rule of two and Darth Vader and Darth Plagueis and all those different types of Darth Sidious. And then I got into some more of the games, right? And I watched more of the shows, and my fandom really grew until like I was a Star Wars fan, right? And then even when Disney acquired it, I was stoked. I was stoked because they were going to make more movies, right? The story was going to go on, right? But then I find myself quickly, they start pigeonholing into the timeline, right? They try to explain every instance of thing. And like, for me, the coolest part about the sequel trilogy was that it was going to be 30 years. All the characters were the right age. It was going to be 30 years into the future, right? And between episode 6 and episode 7, there was 30 years of content they could have filled in. But they decided to focus so much between episode 3 and episode 4. Like, they tried to fill in this gap, which I still, to the life of me, don't understand why. Probably because marketability, because we know those characters best and they're easier to market, right? So that's why they had to add an Obi-Wan story or a Han Solo story, because we know those characters. That's why they had to add more context to Darth Vader, because we know those characters, right? But I was really excited for the aspect of moving forward in this timeline, right? And recently we have all this stuff about Star Wars is dead. And I will agree, Star Wars is dead. They're pushing more of agenda than they are story. They aren't pushing creativity. They aren't pushing good content. They're really only pushing politics, which is sad. It's really sad. But honestly, my final straw was Rise of Skywalker. That was when I knew, and it predates when Star Wars actually died, and I'll get into that in a second. But that's when I knew, for me, Star Wars had died. There's been some okay stuff, like The Mandalorian season 1. I really dug. Mandalorian 2 wasn't necessarily a fan of, or 3, and the Book of Boba Fett was just not my thing. Anyways, the Rise of Skywalker. Okay, this was the culmination of this new trilogy, right? Everyone hated The Last Jedi. And I actually didn't mind The Last Jedi as much, because Luke was never necessarily my favorite character. I was always a fan of Darth Vader, right? I was always a fan of the Sith. So the Sith were more of what I appreciated about Star Wars. But you did need the good guy. You need that thing. And they kind of corrupted him. And I understood that. I got that. But the Rise of Skywalker signified to everyone who was watching this that Disney had zero plan moving forward. They were just flying off the seat of their pants. In the opening crawl of Rise of Skywalker, it says Palpatine is back. For one, how? Right? You can't just throw a character who's been dead for 30 years Oh, he's back, he's back, he's back. What? That's asinine, right? Who? What? Right? And I didn't have a problem with Rey. I liked Rey as a character. But that whole movie, like, there's even an explanation from Poe. He's like, I think it's his name, Poe Dameron. There's like, Palpatine's back. We don't know how. Like, come on. Right? If you're going to do something, really figure it out and do it. Right? Don't just be like, we're going to throw threads here in the first movie. Then Rian Johnson's not going to pick up any of those threads. And then everyone hated those threads. So now we're going to go back to JJ so we can actually try to take those threads. And then, okay. Oh, here's one thing I did hate about The Last Jedi. Leia. Like, come on. Come on. Are you serious? She's in space. And all of a sudden, like, she starts forcing her way back to the ship. That's the most ridiculous scene I've ever seen in my life. In the theater, I was like, okay, come on. Let's be real. Yeah, I don't care that she has force powers, right? Sure, she does. Right? But that was the perfect opportunity to kill her character. That was the perfect opportunity. Right? And R.I.P. Carrie Fisher, right? But she was never my favorite character. Luke was never my favorite character. I dug Han, but Darth Vader's always been my favorite character, right? But the Rise of Skywalker just was a nothing movie. It was a nothing burger. I have watched it once, and I'll never watch it again. This signified Disney killed Star Wars, right? They had the potential to just print money if they just made good stories, right? If they just allowed creative people and not people with agendas to create something great, they had a license to print money. And this is interesting. This is a little backstory here. Disney had a problem around 2010 or 2000, before, I can't remember when they actually bought Star Wars. They had a problem. Their problem was their brand didn't attract boys, young boys, right? Because young boys don't necessarily like princesses, right? Fair, right? They had a problem. They knew the problem, and to fix that problem, they did a great thing. They acquired Marvel. They acquired Star Wars. 2 boy brands, right? 2 of the greatest boy brands, honestly, right? But what do they proceed to do with whoever's in leadership, Kathleen Kennedy, Dave Filoni, whoever those people are, right? And I know who they are. I don't want to say who they are, kind of thing. They proceed to push the ideology about pushing this brand as female-centric, because they don't know how to market to boys, which is why they acquire these brands and then kill the brands, because they're trying to push them towards girls, who isn't the majority of the brand's real estate, right? Boys are. Yes, some women love Star Wars, and they can. It's not saying you can't. But you don't change the entire brand's focus to get a small segment of market because you think that these boys aren't going to care. No, they're going to care. Right? And think about this. I'm about to have children. And if Star Wars, at this current rate, Star Wars, I'm not going to show these movies that they're pushing. Especially because I think they're garbage. I'll probably push the original trilogy and then the prequels. Right? I'll let them watch that. But Star Wars has lost me, and he's lost my future generations, right? They have no concept of it's going to be parents that's going to set what their children likes. Yes, children can like different things than their parents, but most of the time, you like what your parents like. There's a reason I'm a Raiders fan. I'm a Raiders fan because my dad was a Raiders fan, right? Obviously, he doesn't like Star Wars. He don't care about that, but I like it. And I was gonna help my kids like it, but they're not gonna like it anymore. And back to hating on the Rise of Skywalker. Now that I'm circling back here, the entire plot, the entire movie was them searching for an artifact, and then like Palpatine is just sitting on this random planet that they've never been to, building a ginormous army. All right, And then Rey and Kylo Ren are like in love with each other in like a short series of time, right? And then she after the end she takes the name of Skywalker. She's Rey Skywalker, but she's actually Rey Palpatine because she's a clone of, like, the whole thing is stupid. The whole thing is stupid. And now we have this new show, The Acolyte. I'm not gonna watch. If you're watching it, good for you. I'm not going to watch. Okay? It's not for me. That's fine. I like other stuff, right? There's other cool stuff that's coming out that I'm enjoying, right? But I was thinking about this, like, Disney killed Star Wars because they had no plan to make Star Wars good. They have no idea. They don't understand boys, apparently. Right? And they're weighing in on different things. Here's what needs to happen. And I don't think it's going to ever. But this is what happens. This is how you correct the whole situation. Mass layoffs. We need mass layoffs at Disney. Right? And yes, those are their jobs. I'm sorry, but you're making sucky stuff. Mass layoffs. Right? They need to wipe out Lucasfilm and get new people in there. They need to wipe out Disney and get new people in there. They need to wipe out Marvel, new people in there. They need to have people that love these brands, that love creating awesome stories, awesome entertainment, not preaching messages, not agendas, right? But focusing on creating amazing stories that allows people to come back. And people are craving amazing stories. Look at Dune. Dune was one of the most popular movies of this year already, and it just started. Well, now we're 6 months into it. But when it came out, it had just started. And it's probably going to be the best movie. Because people are craving original stories. Right? And here's the other thing about Star Wars. They're trying to make the Force this weird thing where it's not good and evil, right? It's not Sith and Jedi. It's not good versus evil, right? It's this weird, like, everything's subjective relativism. And that's what's garbage about it. There is good versus evil. In this framework, you can create a good story because good triumphs over evil. But in relativism, no one's evil. No one's good. All right. This is it. If you enjoy Star Wars, good for you. Because Star Wars is dead.